Last night, we got some breaking news that President Biden bombed both Syria and Iraq. So this is from a Reuters reporter, Phil Stewart. He says, breaking, U.S. launches airstrikes against Iran-backed militias, targeted operational and weapons storage facilities at 2 locations in Syria and 1 location in Iraq. So this was at 6:54 p.m. yesterday. That's when we got the news. So let me give you more specifics. I want to give you all of the, relevant players in this here. So as I already said, it's 2 locations in Syria, 1 location in Iraq. They say, the Pentagon says we were targeting operational weapons storage facilities. The strikes were targeting a group called the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces, the PMF. They are a mostly Shia-aligned group. They're aligned with Iran. And 4 members of one faction were killed, and they already threatened to retaliate. I believe the total number for all the bombings is 7 people who've been killed, but again, I'll give you more specifics on that in a little bit. So there were, or there still are, I should say, 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq. Now, the U.S. claims that they're there to fight ISIS. That claim is questionable. And the reason it's questionable is because the people who we just bombed are fighting ISIS. That's a fact. Okay, so the Iraqi government and the Syrian government have both previously officially asserted that they want the United States out of their respective countries. So, in other words, the U.S. is illegally occupying both Iraq and Syria under international law. So this is where the relevant portion comes in about the U.S. response, because Joe Biden comes out there and says, or his administration goes out there and says, understand that the reason why we're doing these bombings is because there were drone strikes on our U.S. bases. And the drone strikes, by the way, to be clear, they admit, they're like, there's 0 casualties. Nobody on the U.S. side died, but there were anywhere from 3 to 5 drone strike attempts on our facilities in Iraq and I guess in Syria as well, although the article's unclear on that. Again, wildly unconstitutional and illegal if we have these things there. But that destroys the claim that the U.S. is making of self-defense, because they're saying that's technically U.S. soil, so when you attack us there, we're going to retaliate. But since we are there illegally under international law, and the Syrian government and the Iraqi government both said, you have to get out of our countries, therefore, under international law, we're the occupying force, and they're the ones who are doing self-defense. Which gets to the main claim from the PMF and whoever was involved in the attacks on the American bases recently, which is, listen, it's retaliation for what happened to General Soleimani. So if you remember, it wasn't that long ago when Donald Trump was president, they assassinated General Soleimani, which is a top commander in the region who was taking on ISIS. But since he's aligned with Iran, the United States decided, what if we murder him? What if we murder him to send a message to Iran to show how tough we are? And there's backlash from that. There are unintended consequences of that. So now you got the PMF lined up against you. You have Shia militias lined up against you. And when you're illegally occupying Iraq and Syria, yeah, they might attack your bases and say, get the fuck out of here. And so when the U.S. claims self-defense, that doesn't make sense. Now, probably the most important point is this. They say, quote, the United States took necessary, appropriate, and deliberate action designed to limit the risk of escalation, but also sent a clear, unambiguous deterrent message. Well, guess what? It's 100% illegal and 100% unconstitutional because there's no imminent threat against the United States and there was no approval from Congress. So they could say all they want until they're blue in the face that this was necessary, appropriate, and deliberate action designed to limit the risk of escalation to send a clear, unambiguous deterrent message. But none of that is true. None of that is accurate. None of that is legal. And it flips the dynamic here. Because again, the dynamic is if we're illegally occupying these countries and they attack us, which is what happened, they're the ones who get to make the claim of self-defense. They're the ones who get to make that claim. So we can't say it's self-defense. We can't say our bases are like U.S. soil if they're there illegally. So there's an easy way to protect the troops if you're so concerned about U.S. troops getting attacked. Get the fuck out of Syria and get the fuck out of Iraq. It's not that complicated. So, I mean, it's obvious, right? But, of course, there's an even more devastating part to this story, which is, according to Syrian media, the strikes in Syria. Now, the ones in Iraq were more against the PMF, but in Syria, there's a faction of Hezbollah that was targeted. And apparently, the strikes in Syria, according to Syrian media, killed a child. And the militia groups that we attacked are already talking about revenge. So if the idea was a deterrent or whatever the fuck the U.S. is claiming, the exact opposite is happening. You didn't deter anything. You made it more likely that the cycle of violence is going to continue. So, listen, he already bombed. Biden already bombed Syria once. We covered that story. There are very few outlets that covered that story. It's a crime that they didn't, because this is your job. Like, do your job. If you're a journalist, if you're a reporter, if you're a political commentator, you got to call a spade a spade. And we illegally bombed them previously. Now, we illegally bomb them again as we clutch our pearls and cry bloody murder as if it's them who are breaking the law and coming after us. Again, it all started with the assassination of General Soleimani. And I find it the most absurd aspect of all this, which again, very few people bring up, is that whether it's General Soleimani who we killed, whether it's when we go after Hezbollah, or whether it's going after Shia militias like the PMF on the ground, everybody I just named, whether or not you like them, whether or not you agree with them, whether or not you consider them terrorists, it's all irrelevant. They are currently fighting ISIS and jihadist elements. So if you want to attack them, it is an ironclad fact of reality that you're acting as the de facto air force for ISIS and jihadist elements. You can't talk your way out of that one. You can't wiggle or weasel your way out of that one. That's just a fact. So, listen, this is one of the things where you look at it and you go, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. This is Joe Biden acting exactly like Donald Trump did. Donald Trump bombed Syria. Joe Biden already bombed Syria once. Now he bombed them again. And I don't know what the hell was going on in that conversation in the Situation Room when they were planning this out. But suffice to say, not a single voice in the room was bringing up the points I just made. Not a single one was like, hey, these guys are fighting ISIS. Hey, we started this by assassinating General Soleimani. Hey, we can't really claim self-defense because we're illegally occupying Syria and Iraq. I mean, it's a farce. We're making a joke out of international law is what we're doing. And so if you want to protect U.S. soldiers, if you're so concerned about our people getting attacked, then get the fuck out of there. Get out of there. Why do you even have a stake in a fight between Shia militias who you say you hate and ISIS who we all hate? Why do you say you have a stake in that? Why is that so important to you? Well, listen, at the end of the day, not to sound conspiratorial, but who wins? Who wins? The military-industrial complex. They're the only ones who win. They win because whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president, whether it's a Republican Senate or a Democratic Senate, a Republican Congress or a Republican House, or a Democratic House, no matter what, there's more bombings, which means we need more bombs, we need more fighter jets, we need more drones, we need more equipment. And so the profiteering continues as stuff like this goes on. So, I mean, I'm sure they have a boatload of rationalizations that they take with them as to why they think this is necessary, why they think this is just, why they think we're fighting for human decency and democracy or whatever the fuck. But it's all nonsense. It's complete and utter nonsense. And now you know all the facts about this bombing. Again, I'm a loudmouth idiot YouTuber, and all I did was go through the dense articles on this and pull out all the facts and then explain them to you. You're not going to get... Print outlet is an exception. I think print outlets usually do a decent job. But you're not going to get the detailed facts I just gave you from mainstream media. If you turn on CNN, you turn on MSNBC, you turn on Fox News. My guess is the criticism from Fox News is not going to be, how dare Biden bomb Syria? My guess is their criticism is going to be, he didn't bomb enough, or he didn't bomb the right way. That's what I think is going to happen. But you're not going to get these facts, and you're not going to get this information And you're not going to hear that we're there illegally and these people are fighting ISIS and we started this by killing Soleimani. So it's a real shame. It's a real shame that an idiot, low-budget, loudmouth YouTuber is where you feel like you have to go to get anything resembling honesty and truth. But this is Joe Biden pleasing the establishment, pleasing the military-industrial complex, acting exactly like Trump on this issue, and bombing people who we shouldn't be bombing. If you want to not get attacked by drones in Syria and Iraq, get the fuck out of Syria and Iraq and problem solved, because they're not going to bomb Cleveland. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.